Hello, this is Carl with Future Achievers, and I am here with another inspirational interview. Today, my guest is Robert E. Gunn Jr. of the W.E.B. Dubois Academy. Mr. Gunn talks about what is and who has inspired him, and then also what he and his teachers are doing to inspire their young lions. Follow us on YouTube for more videos like this, and then also check us out on social media on our website, futureachievers.org. Email us at info@futureachievers.org. Join us. Mr. Robert Gunn Jr., thank you for joining me. You are the principal at W.E.B. Dubois Academy in Louisville, Kentucky.
Yes, sir.
Full disclosure, real quick, you are a good friend of mine. We went to college here in Richmond together, played football together, so I know you well. But I'll say too, though, as I've watched, man, just your transition into your current position, I have just, especially as I've seen videos and things of the academy and things that you're doing, man, I've just been in awe and inspired of the man that you become and the work that you all are doing with these young men. And so I definitely wanted to, have a conversation with you, man, and pick your brain a little bit. And so I appreciate you taking this time with me today. So thank you for that.
Yes, sir. It's my pleasure to be with you, brother.
Yeah. So, Mr. Gunn, man, tell us just a little bit about yourself and a little bit about the school.
Gotcha. Well, first off, I always start off by saying it is a great day to be alive. And to any of my Spanish-speaking brothers and sisters that may be watching, es un gran día para estar vivo. So, as you mentioned, name is Robert Earl Gunn Jr. Born in South Bend, Indiana. Grew up in Indiana. Went to college with you, as you said, brother Reinhardt at Earlham College. Played some football. After that, decided to get into education. And a lot of who I am as an educator is rooted in, how I grew up. And quite honestly, it's my father. So I have three kings in my life. The first of which is Frank Carr, our football coach. I get the term great day to be alive from him. Second king is Vince Punzo, who was a professor, who still is a professor at Earlham College. And Vince really helped me open up my eyes to being a scholar as a young man. I went to Earlham to play football, Carl, and I think it's similar for you. So I went to college to play football and I left with an education, right? So Vince was the first person that could kind of see through my layering of I guess, dishonesty academically. So he realized quickly that I wasn't doing any readings for the class, but I would participate in conversations. But I would come to class and I would listen to what everyone else was saying about the reading, and then I would be able to, give some input. And he read one of my papers, and I'll never forget, on one of my papers, he wrote on it, you got to see on this paper, but imagine, how powerful you could be. You'd easily be an A student if you put in the work. So Vince helped me leap to be a scholar. And then my third king is my father, Robert Earl Gunn Sr. I was recently in a multi-million-dollar room with millionaires, right? And I was giving a presentation to them. And that day, it just happened to be on my mind and on my heart for me to tell them, had my father had the same educational experiences that you all had, he would be the person that's chairing this meeting. So a little bit about my father, Robert Earl Gunn Sr., known as Soul or Baybra. If you're in South Bend, Indiana, those are both of his nicknames. But my dad didn't graduate from high school, Carl. And, he's my hero, my number one king, the smartest man that I know. So I asked him one day, I was like, Daddy, why didn't you finish school? Now, make no mistakes. He worked in a factory for 42 years, provided handsomely for my family. But I always was curious about that. So I finally asked him, and he essentially told me, Chubb, that's my nickname. I didn't have anybody at my school that looked like me. I didn't have anybody at my school that I related to. The things that I was learning in school, I was learning more on the streets. And actually, I could have made a better living on the streets than I could have in school. And I remember telling them point blank, Daddy, I should have been your teacher. So that point in time, Robert Gunn, the educator, was launched. My educational experience wasn't great. I mean, it wasn't the worst thing in the world either. But I knew that I wanted to make a difference for all kids, but most notably students that look like you and I. So I got accepted into Teach for America, taught in St. Louis for a few years, moved to Jefferson County where my wife, Lacey, who also went to Earlham with us, transitioned to Louisville, Kentucky, taught a few more years, became an assistant principal, and have been a principal. I believe this is my 10th or 11th year as a principal in Jefferson County Public Schools.
Man, all right. Hey, that's an amazing story. And I didn't know that, about your dad, man, but shoot, I got a lot of respect, for Soul, man. And I can tell, from his boys, just what he has poured in, to all of you.
Right.
Man, I want to go back to something you start out with. It's a great day to be alive. And that is a interesting phrase. I've got a story, associated with that as well too. But tell me, what does that mean to you? Why do you start out? Because I noticed you start a lot of your conversations with that. You did an interview recently that I saw it recently, and you kind of backed up, I think when she introduced you or welcomed you, you said, well, let me start, how I always start. And you said, it's a great day to be alive. Why start with that? Why is that so important to you?
Yeah, so I talked about my three kings earlier. So Frank Carr, our football coach, man, he used to say that every single day when we started practice. And at the time, I thought it was kind of cliche. I'm like, okay, this guy has a catchphrase, it's catchy, it's cool. I like hearing him say it. But as I experienced life and began to live, I made more mistakes than I can count. I've been in situations to where, being alive right now, I literally feel pretty lucky and pretty blessed by that. So it's one of the things, I don't know how other people receive that when I say it, but I know for me, it truly is just a reminder to me that no matter what I'm going through, no matter what's going on, no matter how high or how low that I feel, I still am on this earth and I'm able to, breathe air and to give something, hopefully that day to somebody, whether it's my family, whether it's my friends, or whether it's those that I serve at the Dubois Academy. But it's just important, and it's a great way to start. And I think, like I looked at Coach Carr originally, it's fun and it's funny to see and to hear. I just got an email, I think yesterday, from one of our teachers with this whole virtual environment. He let me know, Mr. Howell actually let me know that one of our students, first initial J, last name McNeely, he said, Mr. Gunn, every single day, this young man makes it known to everyone in our pride group when we start the day that it's a great day to be alive. So, just the impact, and words matter. That's one of the things that I've learned over the course of my years, is that, you can never take for granted how people are going to hear things from you or how people are going to receive you. But I just want all my interactions to be positive. And what better way to start a conversation with telling someone, again, I don't know how high or how low you're feeling today, but it's still a great day to be alive. So let's keep pushing.
Man, I like it. And so my story, and I'll call this a tale of two attitudes, right? So I remember you saying, man, I want to say, did you say this? I know you picked it up. We picked it up from Coach Carr in college, but were you saying this in college? I definitely remember after you graduated, you would say it more and more, and you say it religiously now, but were you saying this in college as well?
I was not. It was, it really became a point of emphasis when I started teaching in St. Louis. I had some young men and young women. I was teaching 7th grade, Carl, but I had students in my class who might have been 16, 17. I had, a couple of kids who were truly the age of 7th grade students. And once I saw what some of those students were kind of going through and some things that they were carrying, and a lot of the negativity that they had about life in general and their outlook, it became natural just for me to start telling them that, every single day. And a lot of times, my first year of teaching, Carl, I was a social studies teacher. I don't know how much social studies, quite honestly, I taught. A lot of what I was teaching for these guys and girls was, just about life, how to thrive, how to survive, and how to look at your circumstances, no matter what they are, and know that you can do better and you have to want better in order for those things to happen. No one's going to give you anything in life, but I also am adamant that, with the right help, with the right support, with the right mentorship, we can teach our students how to take things in a correct manner in life to get what they ultimately want.
Absolutely, man. And I think definitely it's about attitude. It's about your perspective. I work with students as well, and I've been in the school setting here locally. And that is definitely something that I see out of the young people that are struggling, is that they have a very pessimistic, glass half full, type of attitude and outlook on life. I'm in this bad situation. The school is doing this to me, not really taking responsibility for their actions and not appreciating, every moment, of every day, that they had. You are a Hall of Famer. We didn't mention that. You are a Hall of Famer at Earlham College in football. Man, and to watch you play, like you played with a certain attitude as well, too. And it's funny talking about it's a great day to be alive. So my story is I hated that phrase when I was a student, when I was a player. Couldn't stand it. Like, man, Coach Carr would come out there but I was that half, glass half full guy. I was that, I was angry and didn't even know why. I was angry at everything. I was happy about nothing. Every day was a bad day, even though it was a great day simply just because you're alive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, man, I see it now looking back, but I approached it. Man, I'd be sitting down on that field and I'd either complain because it was too hot because we was in July, August, or it was too cold because we was in, October, and every single day, Coach would, climb up to the top of that hill and off in a distance, it's a great day to be alive. And I would just be like, man, if you don't go somewhere with that, it's hot out here, it's cold out here, I'm sweating, I'm sore, I'm bleeding, but now looking back, man, I'm looking like, God, if I could have gotten this message, if I really took this phrase to heart back then, like I do now, because definitely I appreciate every single day. And like you, I've done some things too that should not have me sitting here talking with you right now. So only, by the grace of God am I here, and I'm definitely blessed, to be here. And so that's some of the conversations I've had, I think, with students as well. And like you said, teaching social studies, I think that's so important because we get a lot of students that come our way that have a lot of stuff going on in their lives. And for the most part, a lot of the education is getting them to believe, that it is a great day that they're here. It is a great feat that they made it to school today. It's a great thing that we're talking to them and having this conversation with them. So tell me, how do you instill this in your mascot? You are the Lions, correct? And you call your students Young Lions?
Yes, sir.
How do you instill this in your Lions, in your Young Lions today?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is, our motto at school is, where young lions become kings, right? So a lot of what we do at the Dubois Academy is about a lot of what we're talking about right now, beginning and starting with grace and understanding. So as a 39-year-old man, one of the things that I always remind our staff is we're dealing with 11, 12, 13, maybe 14-year-old young men who are going to make bad decisions. They're going to make mistakes. And we have to understand that because as adults, we make mistakes. We also have to understand that while we understand fully how pressing and urgent it is for them to get educated and for them to continue to progress in our society. Again, you got to remember 11, 12, 13, and 14, there's all kinds of things that you're thinking about that have nothing to do with school, that have nothing to do with your content that is being taught. So one, we have to be understanding and mindful of that. And we can't expect students to be adults in terms of their mindset and their thinking. If you look at it psychologically, they're not ready for that. So that's a point that I always wanted to mention to any educator is, don't find yourself being frustrated. Instead, remember what you were like when you were that age. And like for you and I, Carl, and I won't speak for you, but, a lot of my immaturity followed me into my 30s, so I have to have high expectations for our students, but I have to have that grace and understanding. The other piece of it is we have to make sure that we're mindful that we're providing the right supports. One of our mottos at the Dubois Academy is to eliminate excuses, right? So if a student comes to school and he's hungry, he's going to get fed. If he comes to school and he's dirty, he's going to get clean clothes and he's going to get his face washed. If a student gets off the bus and he's upset and he's crying, he's going to get pulled to the side and we're going to make sure that his day is started out where he's set and he's ready to be positive for that day. So if we've eliminated every barrier to why you cannot be successful that day, then we've lessened the likelihood of our students being unsuccessful. And too often, I think educators, we sometimes go with this poor baby syndrome, and we don't help our young men, or we don't help our students. We just say, oh, so-and-so is going through all of this, and so-and-so is going through all of that. So I'm not going to challenge him today. I'm not going to be hard on him today. There's never going to be a day where students come to our school where they're not going to be challenged, because again, regardless of what that barrier is, we're going to help them through it. Another example, there's a poem, and it's called See It Through, right? And one of the lines in there is, even when hope may seem but futile, when with trouble you're beset, but remember you are facing just what other men have met. So one of the things that we're always also trying to teach our young men is, you might be going through some things right now, man, that are terrible. You might be going through some things that are difficult, but someone else, somewhere else in this world has faced that exact same challenge, and they've been able to overcome it. So it's important for us to match up those scenarios with students. So instead of me telling the student, hey, it's okay that you came to middle school and you were behind academically, but you don't have to stay there. And an example of that, let me show you my 6th grade report card. Let me show you these C's. Let me show you these D's. Let me show you my Earlham transcript where you'll see a 1.9 GPA. Let me show you my freshman and sophomore year of high school's transcript where you will see a 1.9 GPA. So when I tell you that you can do this and you can overcome it, I'm telling you that from experience. Now, there are certain things that I haven't dealt with. When it comes to, we have students to deal with homelessness. We have students to deal with all kinds of abuse. Those are things that I haven't personally encountered, but we have staff members who have, or we're able to point to someone prominent in society who has, seen those things. So often, if we could just give our students that example and that light, because in the moment, when something's happening and something's going on with you, you feel like you're the only person in the world that can understand. You're the only person that this has happened to. And as we, expose our students to these other stories and these other men and these other women who have overcome, it truly does give them that light that so often folks cannot see when they're in the moment. So those are things that we do. And then our school creed, Carl, it's something very proud of my wife. She and I, when we found out that I was going to be able to start the Dubois Academy, I wanted an affirmation statement that we were going to start every single day with. And she and I sat down, wrote, revised. She asked me, well, what are you trying to say here? What do you want to say? What are things that are important? And from there, the creed was born. And that's something that, we say and we recite every single day. And when students first hear it, they learn the words, but as they progress, they learn the meaning behind those words. And I think that's powerful. And that's what we're aspiring for our guys to be able to do and to be able to live by.
Yeah, can you share that creed with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born to achieve greatness. I will not be defined by my mistakes, but my willingness to accept correction, to learn and grow. My greatness will be a result of my work ethic, mentorship, and support. I will achieve all of my goals. I will be accountable for my actions and responsible to positively impact my community. I was born to achieve greatness, and I will determine the king I will become.
Man,
that's it.
I love it, man. And the thing that strikes me, man, just hearing you talk, and I've seen some videos, and I've got some videos on our Future Achievers Facebook page. You sent me some more information, so I'm going to post that as well too, so others can see it. But man, your staff there at the school, you guys are very intentional and very genuine in what you say, the men and women that work with you. But I mean, you can just, man, I feel it, man. It touches my soul just to hear you say these words. And when you're talking to these young lions, when you're talking to your students, man, the power that flows, through these words from yourself to these young impressionable minds, man, I'm just in awe, because, and I think part of the challenge is, I don't know that I hear this very often. Like I don't hear this in the circles that I'm in. I don't see, the students that I'm working with embody these values in this creed. And so maybe, man, what is it that, I mean, do you feel like you're very intentional with this? Like you said, you and your wife sat down and actually created this, right? So this isn't something that the school district gave you. This isn't something that came in the curriculum manual or whatever the case may be. I mean, this is from your heart.
Absolutely. And it's for you. It's for me. It's for Gooch. It's for Rodney. It's for Monton. It's for Seneca. It's for Will. It's for all these guys that we grew up with, because the thing that I get to do every day is, and I shared this with you in a previous conversation, I see one of us in every single student that I have at the Dubois Academy. So when you talk about intentionality, let me just walk you through the process. So October of, I believe, 2017, our Board of Education, after 3 years of talking about we need to do something differently for our African-American males and our males of color. Why? Because they're 3.5 to 4 times more likely to get arrested. They're 3.5 to 4 times less likely to be identified as gifted and talented. They're much more likely to be identified as students who need ECE services. They are the lowest performing students academically, whether you're looking at math, science, social studies, or reading, and they have the lowest sense of belonging in the school, simply meaning if you ask most African-American males who attend the school, do they feel like they belong there? They have the lowest rating of any students in our country, right? So how do we combat that? I think about Soul, and I think about his experiences, and all those numbers speak to that. Like I said, my father could have been anything that he wanted to be had he been given those right opportunities. And again, I never knock this man. Like I said, he's my hero. Again, I aspire to be like him every single day. But those opportunities that he was not given was just flat out criminal. And why that is, I don't know. I didn't go to school with him, so I won't, stereotype or project what could have happened. But most often what does happen, Black males specifically, they're seen as being aggressive. They're oftentimes treated as if they're older than what they are, and they're not given these opportunities. So when it came down to the Dubois Academy, I got to travel the country, Carl. This is my dissertation work. I'm a doctoral student, and it's all about Black male achievement and how do we change outcomes. So I got to travel to Chicago to visit the Urban Prep Academy, which is a school like the Dubois Academy, but it's 9 through 12. I got a chance to visit the Carter G. Woodson Academy down in Lexington, which is a model school for us, primarily males of color. I got a chance to speak to, educators across the country, and just to travel around to see what they were doing and how they were doing things. So one of the things that we started with at the Dubois Academy is, what do we want our students to be like after their time with us? What do we want them to be like when they walk out of our doors? So keep in mind, Carl, I'm an educator, and test scores matter.
Do your best. Do your best. The E, eliminate excuses. Eliminate excuses.
We're at Camp Crooked Creek, and this is our first trip to the Boy Scout Center. It's actually our very first school-wide field trip.
It's nice to meet everybody that I'm going to school with.
The trip is really to exemplify pride, values, perseverance, resilience, initiative, discipline, and empathy. We want to build some bonding, but we also want to push our students and our staff to really get to know one another, and how else better to do it than this beautiful field on this beautiful day out in the hot sun here at Camp Crooked Creek.
Respect yourself and others.
Respect yourself and others.
We're going to do some tug of war. We're going to have some foot races, kickball. We have other young lions who are out at an archery range right now. We have some young lions at a swimming pool, and then we have other young lions at a cope course where they're working on team building activities to where, you can't complete tasks by yourself, so you have to lean on your brother to get it finished.
We are one brotherhood. We are one brotherhood. Let's have some fun today. Group 1.
But that's not what I wanted to think about for the Dubois Academy. I don't want to know what students test like. We wanted to know, what do we want them to be like? So I asked parents that question. I asked community members that question. I asked students those questions, and the answers that I got, Carl, was, I want to be a leader. I want to be smart. I want, my son to be a great father. I want my son to be a great citizen. I heard business leaders saying, we want your students to be able to lead these next waves of job creation and of innovation. I didn't hear one person tell me, well, we want all of your guys to be great test takers. So if no one told me that, that's not how we started the school. So if we wanted our students to be leaders, we wanted them to be learners, we wanted them to be, inspirational. How do we do that? And could we do it with textbooks? And could we do it with the ways you and I learned of sit and get instruction and filling out worksheets? And the answer was absolutely not. So then it came down to, what can we do differently? So we built our entire curriculum backwards from the question, what do we want our guys to be like? We came up with what we call our pride values, Carl. Since we're the Lions, we are a pride. So pride values, 5 dispositions. P is for perseverance. R is for resilience. I is for initiative, D is for discipline, and E is for empathy. And we told ourselves, if we can teach our children how to persevere, how to be resilient, how to show initiative, how to be disciplined, and how to be empathetic, if any individual, black, white, brown, male, female, if you get those 5 things down, you're going to be an awesome human being, right? So then it was like, okay, if that's what we want our students to be like, then how do we do that in school? So we decided we're going to teach them how to do that, not just through academics. So in our classrooms, we make sure that we have perseverance challenges, meaning we give students very challenging and difficult work that they're going to have to persevere to get through. And we tell them that from the get-go. If a student sees his brother comes to school and instead of laughing and cracking up, ha, 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 he's crying, and he walks up and he puts his arm around him and say, hey, what's going on? How can I help you? We let them know that's you showing empathy. We can also show empathy through our curriculum when we introduce a story of 2 characters and we tell them to identify the pride values that they're seeing. So you see, what we're doing is not just teaching standards. We're teaching life, and we're using standards in our curriculum to do that. And that is what we truly believe is moving our students forward. And then the last thing I'll just say about our school, Carl, you know, one thing that I want to definitely encourage you to do is just going back to the point. You said you work with some young people who, you know, might be seemingly pessimistic. Remember, they might have a reason to. So as an educator and as someone who wants to inspire, you have to realize and you have to take that challenge and you have to accept the challenge of saying, what do I have to do to get this young person to see the light? Everyone has gifts and talents, right? So at the Dubois Academy, most schools only like showcase students who are gifted and talented based on general intellectual ability. At the Dubois Academy, you can be gifted based on math, reading, science, social studies, math, all those things, of course, but you can also be identified as gifted in visual arts, in performing arts, in creativity, and in leadership. And just those 4 areas right there, I will never forget, called a parent of a young man, first initial A, last name Brown. I talked to his daddy on the phone, Carl, and I said, hey, I'm just calling to let you know your son has been identified as gifted and talented. He was like, Mr. Gunn, you know who you called? I'm like, yes, sir, I know who I called, and I know who you are. I know who your son is. Y'all have the same name. I'm talking to boom, boom, boom. He's like, well, what is he gifted in? I said, man, your son is a talented artist. So much so, he is going to be working a small internship program where he's going to be partnering with a major art gallery in Louisville, and some of his work might be showcased if he continues to work. Dad is on the phone, like in tears, like crying. I've never been told that my son was gifted in anything, but if as an educational institution, if we're only looking for A and B students, Robert Gunn wouldn't have been gifted or talented in anything. And I don't know if I'm gifted and talented in anything now, but I do know on the football field for consecutive years, you all voted me to be your captain, right? So maybe I had some leadership qualities, but where does that come up for all the students in our nation? Where does things like leadership, where is that like encouraged? Where is that highlighted? Where is that celebrated? So often it's just A's and B's. So we wanted to make sure that we intentionally change that at Dubois.
Man, a couple of things I want to touch on. So in hearing the story of the school, again, we talked about, you know, your work, the teacher's work being very intentional, you all being very genuine. It sounds like the community was very intentional as well too, with identifying and saying, hey, we have a segment of our population that is being underserved, that is being misrepresented, and we need to do something about that. And so instead of just throwing money at the schools there or coming up with some law or changing busing schedules or where they said, let's create a school specifically for this disenfranchised population to try to help them improve their outcomes. So very intentional on their part. But then the other thing that came out of that is listening to how you created your curriculum, you know, kind of backwards with the question of, you know, what do we want students to be like? What do we want that end result to be? And then working backwards, you're very innovative as well too, because I feel like a lot of times us in the professional world, whether you're a teacher or whatever industry you're working in, but a lot of times we go in and the employer tells us, this is the way you need to do the job. Here is the manual. Here's the box I want you all to fit in and to stay in, and you have to do it that way. And so it's like y'all blew the box up and was like, hey, we're going to do what makes sense based upon the information that our students and our families gave us. with that too, and you talked about the empathy and the pride values. I saw a video, and I'll make sure I share this as well too, of your students are walking down the halls, or maybe it was a photo, but they're embracing each other. They're giving each other handshakes, they're hugging each other, like showing true love to each other. And that is something like I do not see, but that I think is very important. And I've actually talked to some students about, I just kind of cheesingly called it a love campaign. But I feel like a lot of our problems in school is because kids aren't taught how to love one another. But if you look at the adults, we don't know how to love each other either. And a great example of that is look how we treat each other on social media. You know, look at the comments. And so if the parents are, and if the adults are, you know, that example for the children, why would we expect anything else, you know, from our kids? But they're going into schools and they're not showing love to one another. They're not showing empathy. And so kids are being ostracized and picked on and bullied. And we have all these terrible violent acts occurring in our schools. And school should be a safe place. School should be the place that kids, you know, want to go. I'll tell you, for me, in my childhood, there were some things going on for me that school was my safe place. I wanted to go to school so I could get away from some other things that was happening. Now, unfortunately, I didn't want to go to school to learn. My favorite class was lunch. But regardless of that, it was my safe space. And I want that for students as well, too. Everybody needs to have that safe space. And unfortunately, it seems like not all schools, you know, are that for students. Man, there's just so much, you know, to unpack here, and the conversation is so rich. I want to get to, I mean, just give me a message for students. I mean, what would you say to students now, right, who are, you know, struggling with different difficulties, and it doesn't matter how much money you have or how much money you don't have. I've worked with wealthy individuals. I've worked with individuals living in poverty. I've seen 2-parent households. I've seen, you know, households with kids growing up with grandparents and aunts and uncles and or dad's ex-girlfriend, or whatever the case may be. The problems that we face span socioeconomic, span race, span religion, span whatever word and we or label we can put out there to kind of divide us up and break us up. There is kids that are being neglected, kids that are being abused, kids that don't have enough to eat. Like you said, kids that, you know, don't have running water or coming to school with dirty clothes or whatever the case may be. Now we also add in how the poor way that we treat one another. We don't show love and empathy to each other a lot of times, especially in social media. We have COVID-19 right now. We have kids that were taken away from school early last school year, and were sent home and having to learn from home. And now we're talking about some communities here. We've actually got some kids going back to school. I know you guys are still virtual, but looking at a plan to get back into the building. We've got injustice, you know, being broadcast on television, maybe like never before, or maybe like we haven't seen necessarily since, you know, the 60s and days of civil rights, you know, but we've got people protesting and taking to the streets to have their voice heard. And our kids are seeing all of this and are in the middle and being impacted of all of this. So with this kind of perfect storm swirling around our kids and your kids, what are you telling to students? What can you say to students right now, man, to help them stay motivated, to make them feel like they are welcome, they have a place, they are safe, and to help them to persevere and to be resilient?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question, Carl. So the first thing is, you know, I think that as adults, especially as educators, we have to be very mindful and I would say, you know, very skillful in letting our students know just those things that you mentioned, Carl. So this generation is literally the first generation that's coming up with several things, and we can call them all pandemics if we wanted to. One, you touched on social media earlier and what they face with social media. I mean, just think about it. You know, you and I grew up being able to watch television, and of course, there might have been people that we aspired to be like, you know, but we would see them once a week. You know, when we're watching an episode, and, you know, thought that their lives and what they were going through might have been perfect. But now you have people who literally post something every single day, and our students sometimes who haven't experienced life yet don't really realize that that picture that they're seeing of that person is that person's best every single day. There were probably several hours put into that photo of getting that perfect shot where their skin is perfect, where their makeup is perfect, where everything around them is perfect. That's not real and that's not reality, but our students are able to scroll through that and see that all the time. That's the first generation that this is ever happening to. That on top of the disconnect between human touch and human interaction. If I can sit behind a screen and say whatever I want to for the whole world to see, all of this fire, this vitriol that I've thrown out, if I say that when I see you, Carl, I'm going up in your mouth, and everybody in the school reads that, I really don't have any choice but to do that when I see you. And it's so easy to hide behind keyboards. So this is the first generation that's facing that. You know, you look at something as simple as climate change. How is that impacting our minds? How is that impacting our feelings? How is that impacting our being? And then you go to the other things that you talked about that this generation is facing. Again, the first ones ever. It's a pandemic that is going on that has killed over 200,000 people in our country, and it disproportionately kills folks who look like you and I. And then you top all of that on what is going on, especially for the students that are here in Louisville who are seeing what's going on with the case with Breonna Taylor and what many perceive to be an injustice there when it comes down to, you know, the system that was created to protect all, and the system that was created to encompass all, and the system that was created that said in their own words, all men are created equal, but you and I, for the longest time, only represented 60% or 3/5 of a person. Like, how are we now trying to rationalize? Everything is coming to a head. So for the students, what I would tell them is, don't lose sight of your resilience. Think of it as you are the first generation that y'all are in a boxing match. And regardless of how skillful your hands are, y'all getting them hands put on you. Not even because you didn't prepare, not even because you can't defend yourself, but it's so many punches coming and they're coming so fast, but you are still standing. Despite where you are, you're still standing, and you are literally the first generation. You will be able to tell your children and your grandchildren, I lived through that. So that's the first thing. The second part of it is they just need to realize that they're going to be the people that help change it, right? So a lot of things that people complain about or things that we want to see change, complaining just isn't going to do anything. Now think about how resilient our guys are and how innovative they are. Carl, they're creating problems. The very first day of NTI, how many schools had to shut down NTI, non-traditional instruction, because our students had the wherewithal to just hijack the system? You had guys who were smart enough and girls who were smart enough to say, hey, you know, school about to start. Send me that Google link. Send me this, send me that. They literally in places shut down an entire school district because we didn't anticipate this becoming a problem. So if they can use those same innovative skills to help create and to help be proactive, just imagine what that looks like. The last thing that I would say to young people right now is, you were not meant to be the next anybody. I tell folks that all the time. I find it flattering if somebody ever says, hey, they want to be like me. I'm cool with that. But I'm always telling our guys, don't be the next Robert Gunn. Be the first you, because we're all unique. We were all given a set of skills and talents. And we have to, as educators, help our students facilitate what they want to do and what they want to be and make a change for positive. So that's what I would tell them. You don't have to be like anybody. You can take all these wonderful skills from all these people that you aspire to be like, and that's cool. But I tell students all the time, don't be the next me, be the first you. So if we can get our students to understand that, and again, as educators, we have to be equally resilient, because it's so easy to just throw our hands up and say, oh man, this generation, man, they this, their parents ain't this, their parents ain't that. Man, I don't waste time on things that I can't control. I can't control what a parent does. I can't control what a student's home life is. But once they walk through those doors at 3307 East Indian Trail, Louisville, Kentucky, 40213, man, we can control all of that, from what they think to what they want to be, to how they want to be. We got all of that. And, you know, one of the things that's prominently displayed on our walls is, until lions have historians, hunters will never cease to be heroes, Carl. So that's just our way of telling our guys, yeah, you in a system that's unjust. How is it fair that Black grandfather went and fought for this country in World War II, came home to nothing and was denied rights, couldn't get a loan literally in a certain area, certain neighborhood. And you have a white grandfather who fought in that same war for the same country, for the same values. He comes back and he's able to get a home loan, which then allows his family to move to the suburbs, which then starts a cycle of generational wealth, because in being a homeowner in certain areas that were identified and literally redlined on maps, like, that is our country. That's what's happened, you know, and you think of all those things, and our students, they need to understand this. They need to understand the system is working exactly as it was meant to be, but that system is not sustainable if we have advocates and allies who understand that system and are willing to dismantle it at any cost. So that's what, as educators, we need to be on a mission about, and stop making excuses about, well, we just can't reach these kids. We just can't do this. Every kid that I've ever seen and known has had at least one positive relationship with someone in the school building. And if they can have a positive relationship with one person, you know, I'm always asking, I want that one person. If it's only going to be one person you have a relationship with for every kid, I want it to be me. And that's the mindset I feel like as educators we need to take, because quite honestly, if we don't help and assist facilitating these young people's minds, their bodies, and liberating, you know, their souls and their spirits, it's going to be some super dark times for folks moving forward. I think we're in dark times right now, but the work that we're doing at Dubois, work that's being done, you know, what you're doing with Future Achievers, I think that is the light that we need to continue to shine and continue to see. It's tireless work. Go to bed tired every single night, but wake up, you know, just wanting a better future. I have a 12-year-old and an 8-year-old. You know, they're going to grow up with the kids that you have in Richmond, right? They're going to grow up, you know, in this same world, in the same environment. And I'm just adamant this place has to be left better than I found it when I'm going. So that's the work and that's the push.
Man, I appreciate it. One last thing, because I know time is running short. I got to get you back. But going back to the three kings, you know, and again, man, when I could talk to you for hours, but I think you said, but shoot. And I tell students this too, words have meaning. You know, the Bible says life and death are in the power of the tongue. You talk about three kings. You didn't say three guys that I like, three mentors, three any other descriptive word. You say kings. And again, I mean, I don't know that you can really say kings with your shoulders slumped all down and with, you know, so like kings just, man, just opens you up and just makes you puff out your chest and makes you feel proud. So again, that intentionality in your words, in your actions, man, I think is a great skill, is a great characteristic for people to have. But with that, with your three kings, what message can you give or would you give to students to allow them to find their kings or their queens or that person that inspires and can help them? Because what I see sometimes with students, because they do get so overwhelmed with the challenges in life, they come in and they have experienced life a certain way. Maybe before no adult really took interest in them. They don't have the support they needed at home. They didn't get the support they needed from teachers before you or whoever came along. And so these kids have started to build up walls to protect themselves from being hurt again by just yet another person that gives up on them. But obviously you, at some point, you allowed, you know, Coach Carr and his, you know, knowledge, and your dad and Vince Punzo to inspire you, to touch you in a way that it's got you on the path to greatness. What do you say to students now to encourage them to do the same thing, to allow adults, you know, to work with them?
Yeah, I think it's two parts. I think for the students, it's very simple, and that's just to make adults around you give you more. And I don't know if that's the answer that, you know, is best, you know, to be stated right now, but I truly believe that. So the kings who I had in my life were folks that, you know, I didn't necessarily have to seek out. Coach Carr was there doing his thing. You know, of course, my father was raising me, and Vince Punzo, you know, I think if I was to ask Vince today, he just saw something in me and he was just doing his job, right? He was just doing what he was supposed to do. So I would flip that question, and not necessarily what I would say to young people. I would ask them to just be receptive and to be open, but I would ask them to demand that they have kings and queens in their lives. And to the adults who are out there in any industry or any position where they are expected to serve young people, then they need to be that light and they need to be that example. You can't be a dud. You can't be someone that no one aspires to be like and be a king or a queen, right? So I want everybody to be authentic and I want them to be themselves. But I think this fundamentally, Carl, and I truly mean this. I think that anyone who goes into education is a saint and they have a heart of gold. If you ask anyone that goes into education, why did you become a teacher? Somewhere in their answer, they're going to say because they wanted to make a change, they wanted to change the world, or they wanted to be the difference. So whether you talk about change, whether you talk about changing the world, whether you talk about being the difference, none of those things are going to be easy, right? Change is fundamentally hard, especially if you're dealing with situations that we're dealing with right now that students are dealing with. So I would challenge all adults to be that king or to be that queen. And you don't have to be, charismatic. You don't have to be yourself, because that yourself went into education to make the change and to make the difference. So be willing to commit to that and to make that work. So one of the things that I wanted to just go back to briefly that you mentioned earlier is when it comes down to, talking about education and, what we're doing for our students at the Dubois Academy, I often have to remind, educators, remind myself, remind people around me, like, this is what we signed up for. Like, it's not supposed to be easy. Our students, Dubois is a phenomenal place, but Carl, I know that our students that we have at 11 right now won't necessarily realize their opportunity that they're living through right now until they're 30, 40, 50. Some of them realize it sooner, but I know for a fact that every one of these guys is going to look back on this situation and say, man, I went to a great school. So when it comes down to being an educator, what I'm imploring all educators to do is serve and work your passion, not your position, and not for a paycheck. So I'm dead set and adamant when you talk about how can I so confidently say I don't care about test scores, because I believe if we're doing right by these young men, test scores will take care of themselves, right? So what am I willing to lose for that? I'm willing to lose this position. I know good and well if test scores don't improve for our students, I'm a fall guy. I get that, and I'm okay with it. But I'm still not going to walk around touting, we got to improve test scores. No, we got to improve people. And I think if as educators, especially leaders in education, if you can inspire and instill your staff to know we're on a mission to change the world, we're not on a mission to get better test takers, then that really frees them up and that uncuffs them in terms of what they can do curriculum wise. So do you mean I don't have to read this text? I can read this text? Yes. Does that mean that I can show this part of this documentary to drive this point home? Yes. Does that mean that certain days when I come in and I'm not feeling well and my students aren't feeling well, that we can circle up and we can have a restorative circle because things haven't been going well between me and the class or classmates or class members, and I can take away from teaching time for that? I tell the staff that's not taking away from teaching time, that's teaching. That's what you're supposed to do, because if you don't get past this point in this contention, no one's going to learn anything. And I say all that to say, for 2 years straight, Carl, with African-American males in a district of 155 schools, 100,000 students, we've had more growth academically in reading or math amongst African-American males 2 years running than anyone else. I'm proud of that because it's looking at growth. Carl Reinhardt came in here, he is now here. Robert Gunn came in ahead of Carl Reinhardt, he is now here. So whether you're the highest performing student or the lowest performing student, you're getting your needs met at a school, at the Dubois Academy, because you feel like you belong there. You know there are adults there that care about you. You know there are adults that are not going to give up on you. And you know that we're going to love you to life, but we ain't gonna pity you to death, because whatever you're going through, we're gonna work through it. And then after that is eliminated, again, what's the reason for you not to learn? So hopefully anybody that's watching this, of course, I'm loving the students. I'm asking them to be receptive and responsive to adults that they see something in that adult deserves to be led into their lives. But more often than not, man, I'm not putting anything on the kids. As adults and as the educators, it's our job to inspire them and to make them come to us, through our words and through our actions. And even if they're a little defensive and they're hesitant, if we are consistent day in and day out, we don't change, we continue to be in their lives, we do what we tell them we're going to do, then it's going to be kings and queens out there for everybody.
I was born to achieve greatness.
I will not be defined by my mistakes.
I will not be defined by my mistakes,
But my willingness.
but my willingness.
For
to accept correction, to learn and grow. My greatness will be a result of my work ethic, mentorship, and support. I will achieve all of my goals. I will be accountable for my actions. And responsible to positively impact my community.
I was born to achieve greatness.
I was born to achieve greatness.
And I will determine.
And I will determine